Now, as we said before the break, we were supposed to have Craig Blair, State Senator Craig Blair, on the show today, but he is currently occupied, so filling in for him from Charleston.
This is quite a designated hitter.
It really is, yeah, absolutely. Senate President Mitch Carmichael. Good morning, sir. How are you?
Good morning. I'm great. How are you? Let me just say up front that I asked Craig he's going to be leading an incredible effort with the education reform package as it runs through the entire committee of the Senate. So he is overwhelmed with work right now, and I just told him if he didn't mind, I would take this spot and talk about education reform. Then it's an honor and a pleasure to be with you.
We really appreciate you being on. So this week, of course, the Senate unwrapped the sweeping education omnibus bill. Includes everything from teacher pay raises to educational savings accounts, charter schools, changes to how employees opt in or out of teachers' unions. Already getting some pushback from the unions. Now, we saw word, and of course, I have not read this bill. I'm assuming you have. Word is circulating that part of the bill includes a provision to allow school boards to vote to increase taxes kind of unilaterally to support their school systems instead of putting it to a countywide levy. Is that the case?
Which is already current provisions. There's nothing changing about that. There is options for counties to increase their opportunities to raise the levy rate slightly. We're right now, I'm going to say we're 3/100ths of a cent below the maximum levy rates. So the county boards would have the opportunity to do so, but it's totally permissive. It's not by any means a requirement or even an encouragement. It simply provides the opportunities for a locally elected county board of education to manage the system as the county sees fit and puts the members of the Board of Education, elects those members of the Board of Education. So, too often, one of the biggest criticisms of the education system in West Virginia is twofold. One is the performance of our students. We rank near, if not last, in standardized testing results across the 4th grade, 8th grade, and graduation rates, near last in America. And one of the identifying characteristics of the reason that it occurs is that the education delivery system in West Virginia is so centrally controlled and proscribed from the capital city in Charleston. Everybody that studied our system says there must be more local control. Local control provides better outcomes for our students, teachers, and parents. And every time we, as a legislature, try to pursue the flexibility that gives counties options and allows the voters in that county to decide whether or not they put a particular member on the school board who, professes one theory or another, we get some pushback by saying, oh, no, you need to control this from Charleston. But our theory is, and the theory of all who have studied this system, is that you need more local control. And that's what this bill does.
When some of the teachers' unions have come out with their talking points, and I'm just trying to play devil's advocate here.
Oh, you're doing a great job.
So,
is that a compliment?
I'm hoping that's a compliment. But one of the things that they're saying is that when you introduce things like educational savings accounts and charter schools into the mix, that it siphons off money that would otherwise go to the public school system. Currently in the state, I understand we spend about $12,000 per student. Is that correct?
That is correct, among the highest in the nation.
Is this a matter of making the school system more competitive because it's got some private competition?
Yeah, exactly right, and that's very well said. And when teachers or teachers' unions, I don't think most teachers that are doing their job and are well-trained in their disciplines and areas of expertise say, bring it on. If there's competition in the system, I'm a high performer, I will excel. And, there are those at the union leadership at the top of it that just want to make, okay, everyone's equal, nobody excels, the highest gets paid the same as the lowest, and that's their mentality, but they're defending a system that is last. And, everyone thought, I'll use a sports analogy. You probably have a lot of listeners, the Super Bowl weekend's coming up. If, I'll just use Western University as an example. If our football program finished, pick a number, 8-4, for 3 years in a row, we're firing the coach, even though there's a winning record. This education system in West Virginia that we've constructed finishes last. And so there's no defense of the status quo. Now, someone wants to say, oh, my God, you're taking money out of the public school system to send to public charter schools, which is, again, a fallacy. These are public charter schools. They're open enrollment. Everyone can go to them. And we're not taking any money out of the current system. In fact, we're adding money to the system such that, and this is something your listeners should just love to hear, is that we're providing a nurse or a counselor in every school in West Virginia, funding for that. So right now we have these drug epidemic programs. We understand that teachers are confronted with so many students that come from broken homes or drug-infested homes and so forth, and we have heard their outcry for additional support in areas of counseling and nursing and those type things. So we're providing money for that. We're allowing counties to pay differential rates for areas of critical need. If you have a math shortage, which we perform so poorly in math, our students, then pay that person more. Incentivize a great math teacher to come to your county and teach your children in a way that provides an education that enables them to compete in a 21st century economy on a worldwide basis.
Senate President Mitch Carmichael is with us. We're kind of unpacking this this giant omnibus education bill. There are so many things that appeal to a broad group of folks in this bill, but there are some things that really bother, especially some folks in education. One is that there is a provision that would penalize those who walk out of the job, that they would not get paid. We know that during the work stoppage this past year, those folks did get paid eventually, but there would be a provision in this bill, I understand, that if they walk out of the job again, that they will do it with no pay.
Well, let me just expand upon that just a little, because it's well said. It needs a little bit of clarification. Sure. Because the teachers sign a contract for 200 days, work days, and we often see, like, if a school's canceled for snow days or something like that, while that day needs to be made up. Well, in this situation, same scenario. If a teacher or school service personnel, so forth, if they go on strike, they must still make those days up in order to be paid. So they'll be paid for the 200-day contract, and there's like that 200-day contract specifies work days within a range of, I don't know, I think it's 240 days. That you must get this 200-day in. So if a work stoppage occurs, the person who is not working will not be paid until they make that day up. So no different than, if you don't show up for work, you're not going to get paid. Just like anybody in the private sector. But if you have an opportunity to make that day up, which is a nice opportunity, really, the teachers can still, and the school systems can still make that day up. But what's in the bill also is there will not be any extracurricular activities on days in which there is school canceled for a work stoppage. And right now you don't have extracurricular activities if you have snow days. If you can't have school, you're not playing basketball that night. But if there's a work stoppage, you're not going to have extracurricular activities during those times either.
Senate President Mitch Carmichael joins us. Let's unpack another part of this giant bill, and that is the education savings accounts. Is this going to start a precedent in which, we had a question from a listener who said, what about folks who contribute to their children or grandchildren's private education accounts? If this provision passes, does that mean that that they can get some sort of tax break eventually? Is this going to snowball into underfunding public education?
No, and by no means, because that person, I'll just take that very specific example, that person who's contributing to the education, a private school education, can already get tax credits and tax breaks through, like the state of West Virginia for years has had in place the Smart 529 programs where you can contribute to those education savings accounts to pay for educational expenditures for dependents or grandparents or grandchildren, that kind of thing. So that's already in place. That listener will be comforted to know that's already exists, and that's not draining the public education system. But education savings accounts, just to unpack that a little bit, is limited in this bill to 1% of the student population in West Virginia. So for anyone to sort of demagogue that issue and say, oh my gosh, this thing's going to destroy West Virginia's education system, we're talking about 1% of students would be eligible to obtain education savings accounts for their guardian would have education savings accounts capabilities. So clearly, it's utilized in several other states to great advantage. We want to give this an opportunity to see if it works. And certainly our motivation for that is the fact that, our current student performance is very low. Many people use education savings accounts particularly for special needs students that have, for instance, a special requirement for a particular curriculum or maybe a device to help them do learning. So that's what it's sort of envisioned to be utilized at, but we could put a cap on it of 1%. So nobody can say that we're just, diving headlong into something until we know all the results.
Senate President Mitch Carmichael joins us. We are almost out of time, have about a half minute left. If for some reason this fails colossally as an omnibus, can it be broken up? Do we have enough time in the general session to revisit this and take some of the parts of it? Or is this an all or nothing effort?
No, we have time, and we're going to, continue to march forward on it. But if I could just take the last few seconds here and say, to build the case for doing this, is that, and I'll quote John F. Kennedy, who said, "Our progress as a nation can be no greater than our progress in the realm of education. Every child matters. Our children's education is vitally important." I'm not quoting now; these are my words, but. Until we realize that the current system is not fulfilling the needs of our children, that we're finishing last, we must be motivated by a moral imperative to change this culture in our state and make sure that we implement the funding, the changes, the options, the flexibility to allow students, parents, and teachers to achieve at their highest levels. And I'm excited about this prospect. It's transformational, and it's the right thing to do for our state.
State Senate President Mitch Carmichael, thank you for calling in today and filling in for Senator Blair. We appreciate it.
Thank you. It's been an honor and a pleasure.
Absolutely. Take care. Again, that's State Senate President